Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Former Governor Larry Hogan makes a swing through the Eastern Shore in his bid for Maryland's Senate seat. We have an exclusive interview with Wicomico County Executive Julie Giordano on an effort by the County Council to eliminate her job. And then the blue crab population remains steady, but there are still concerns. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. In our studio this afternoon is Coastal Point reporter Susan Canfor. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Don. Thank you.
So, Susan, the former governor, Larry Hogan, made a swing through the Eastern Shore this week, stopping by Cambridge, finally arriving at Stephen Decatur High School. Of course, he is running for the U.S. Senate as a Republican. What do we know?
Yes, Senate candidate and former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan was in Cambridge this week. He spent a little time at the Simmons Center Market, where he was admiring and tasting meats and cheeses that the market sells. He was accompanied by Dorchester County officials, including Councilman Ricky Travers and County Council Vice President Mike Detmer. Travers is a Democrat and Detmer is a Republican, but they're both endorsing Hogan. Hogan won the Republican primary earlier this month, and he will be running against Angela Alsobrooks. She, of course, is the Prince George's County executive, and that general election will be in November. Detmer has said he and Travers worked together to find what he called practical and pragmatic best paths forward. Travers said it's not about being a Democrat or a Republican when it comes to the Senate seat. He said it's about the best person for the job. And Hogan, of course, said he is the best person for the job. He said he kept his promises when he was governor, and he paid more attention to the Lower Shore than governors before him. He said his campaign has a lot of support in Dorchester County, and he is expecting to win big there in November. After that, he was on his way to Berlin to give the commencement address at Stephen Decatur High School. But first of all, he stopped by Ocean City, where he met with the Ocean City Career Firefighter Paramedics Association and the Worcester County Professional Firefighters.
So, in terms, by the way, you certainly was stopped by because he made this commencement address to Stephen Decatur High School.
I stopped by and heard his commencement address. It was just packed. It was on the field at Stephen Decatur High School with dark clouds overhead, but the rain held off until just before it was over, and I was able to catch up with the governor, former governor, and talk to him for a few minutes.
It's a very blue state, but, hey, look, people, regardless of their party, I've always tried to represent everybody in Maryland and work across the aisle and try to just get things done. It is a mess, and our politics is broken, and they're very concerned about the divisiveness in America, and they'd like to see us come together and fix things.
At the commencement address, he talked about his illness. You remember he was diagnosed with cancer not too long after he was elected in his first term. He talked about how he had to fight every day, and he gave the students a lot of encouragement. He told them they will face battles in life in different ways, maybe not in health ways like he did, but they'll face battles every day in different ways, and he encouraged them to be strong and to always have a lot of confidence in themselves. The commencement was very nice. His address and also all of the students came up one by one and got their diplomas, a lot of them. Stephen Decatur has a lot of students. It was a big graduating class. And then as they were told to move their tassels, there were some fireworks that went up into the sky, and it was very nice event, and Governor Hogan stayed for the entire thing. So Stephen Decatur's class of 2024 is off to make a difference in the world.
Okay. And Susan, we also see him here closer to home in Wicomico County. We have this impasse over the collective bargaining agreement for the Wicomico County Sheriffs, unanimously struck down after council members voiced some doubts about whether the pension would remain solvent given a 2.5% cost of living adjustment. What's going on here?
Yeah, there's been some disagreement about the Wicomico County Sheriff's collective bargaining agreement, and that disagreement is continuing. Wicomico County Councilman Joe Holloway said the council has been meeting and talking about this. He said he's been talking with other council members, and the consensus seemed to be the council members did not get the information they needed to make the decision on one portion of the agreement in time. Council President John Cannon said much of what he called the strain of the agreement was due to a time crunch because the information the council needed was not provided to them on time by County Council Executive Julie Giordano. Do you need proof, he said? Well, here's the proof. The council had to schedule an 8:30 a.m. closed session to try to evaluate data because it got to them too late. Ms. Giordano was asked to provide the council with that information by April 1st, and an agreement was supposed to have been approved by May 1st. There was an option to extend that deadline, and the extension was applied. Meantime, Scott Hamilton, he's the president of the Fraternal Order of Police, released a statement saying the FOP is extremely disappointed with the council's decision to, as you said, Don, unanimously reject the FY25 through FY26 collective bargaining agreement. Tempers have been flaring over this, and the matter, of course, has been contentious. The agreement calls for a 2.5% cost of living increase and includes a revised pay scale for deputies. Giordano said the council's decision is detrimental to law enforcement, and she's disappointed, especially because that cost of living increase is needed to attract deputies in Wicomico County and to keep them. So there's some discontent in the county council. Gee, there's a surprise, huh?
So, and we'll see how that works out, because I'm sure there'll be more to come. Also, tonight is midnight is the last day for survivors of the Catholic priest abuse case. The file against the bankruptcy of the Baltimore diocese. Adam's sister, an attorney representing the victims, called that deadline part of the cruelty of the bankruptcy process. That's because there are limits to the period in which you could actually pursue legal recourse. What do we see here? It comes after, obviously, the law that was passed, the Child Victims Act.
Yes, well, one gentleman who was a victim is 62 now. He lives in Westminster, Maryland. He was planning to sue the Archdiocese of Baltimore for damages caused by a priest who he said fondled and molested him when he was a boy. His plans were thwarted because the church he attended as a boy, Shrine of Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Baltimore County, declared bankruptcy. That man, Mark Floto, is one of hundreds who has submitted a proof of claim form in the Archdiocese case before a deadline for victims to add themselves to a list for future compensation. What happened to him, he said, caused turmoil every step of his life, and he said he still has trouble talking about it without starting to cry. His lawyer, Adam Slater, said he encourages anybody with a claim, anybody who was sexually abused, to come forward, and said there is cruelty in the bankruptcy process because an established deadline for suing is limiting the time survivors have to file the lawsuits. A state attorney's report stated more than 150 priests and church officials tormented, that's the word they used, tormented more than 600 children and young adults clear back to the 1940s. And it was so widespread. It was not only in Baltimore, but also in 9 counties in central and western Maryland. These counties comprise the diocese's jurisdiction. So the church, expecting hundreds of lawsuits, filed for bankruptcy in late September. That means the lawsuits had to be reconfigured into proof of claim forms and supporting documents. Dozens of the survivors were represented by attorney Philip Federico, and he told a Baltimore newspaper the Archdiocese's efforts to cover up widespread abuse made it more difficult to find the many victims. Attorneys are trying to find a way to help their clients file late, and as of May 20th, about 320 claims had been filed, but they're expected to be close to 1,000 claims. Now the lawyers are trying to determine how much money the church and the insurance companies will pay. So it's a sad story, Don, and it's going to be ongoing until they figure all this out.
And it was Memorial Day weekend. We got off to, I understand, a bit of a slow start, is what I saw, some of the reports. What do you find in terms of going on in the Delmarva Peninsula and the coastline?
It was a little bit of a slow start. For the most part, the weather was pleasant Memorial Day weekend. Saturday was sunny and warm, and the beaches in Ocean City were filled with sunbathers, and the boardwalk shops were busy with visitors having their hands full of my favorites, French fries with vinegar and pizza. The weather was very nice on Sunday. Early in the weekend, some hotels reported reservations were coming in kind of slow, and there weren't as many crowds at the restaurants and in the bars on Friday. But by Saturday, the restaurants were pretty full, and the hotels had started to fill up and flash no vacancy signs on their outside signs. Seems like the crowds were a little slower than usual getting into town, but overall it was a successful weekend with several events that had a more serious tone as they observed the true meaning of Memorial Day. In Ocean View on Saturday, the VFW, U.S. Army veteran and Delaware Register of Wills, Greg Fuller, was the guest speaker. I was there covering that event. Mr. Fuller talked about being grateful to those who gave their lives for our country. He told the full audience gathered outdoors at the VFW post that men and women, guys and girls, girls and boys, made the ultimate sacrifice for this country, and they were willing to do that, but they're here and we are not. Fuller is a man of faith who's done some missionary work, so of course he brought faith into his remarks. He quoted from the Bible and compared those who die for their country to Jesus and talked about the one God this nation is formed under. He asked those attending to think about how important it is that Memorial Day should be every day. There was also a Memorial Day observance on the boardwalk in Bethany Beach, and in downtown Berlin, there was an old-fashioned parade with floats and the names of, in Wicomico County, the names of soldiers who died in battle were read. So overall, it was a weekend of celebration, enjoying the beautiful ocean where the locals are at home, but also remembering those who gave their lives for their country.
We also, by the way, talked to Susan Jones. She's executive director of the Ocean City Hotel, Motel, Restaurant Association about this past weekend and how it went. Here's what she had to tell us.
The weather was certainly interesting. We had sun, we had clouds, we had rain, we had fog. And as you know, weather is always the driver of business on Memorial Day weekend. So in the beginning, it started out a little bit slow. Saturday was fantastic, lots of sunshine. And I would say businesses, depending upon who you ask, some did really well and others did so-so. So it really depended upon what type of business and who you asked.
So I understand that some of the bookings were a little slow when it came to the hotels. Was that just sort of a mixed thing, or was that generally?
Generally, Memorial Day weekend is always weather dependent, so people wait right up until the last minute until they book a room. But we did see a lot of people who came last minute, and a lot of the franchise hotels were the ones that filled first, and that typically happens anyway. Those franchises did pretty well.
So what sense do you get, by the way, about the bars and the restaurants? How did they do?
Some of them did great and others okay. You know, when people rent Airbnbs and the condos, a lot of times they are cooking in their homes. So that is starting to affect some of the restaurant business too. So it really depends on how well the restaurants are marketing and how they're getting their name out there as to who's going to do the best.
In terms of gas prices, they're pretty high, at least compared to past years. Did that have an impact at all, or do we have any sense about that yet?
I don't think that necessarily had a huge impact. I mean, I think the good news is it's really a hassle to fly and lots of cancellations you're seeing all over the news. So hopefully that will drive people to get in their cars rather than book a vacation where they're flying somewhere.
And what do you see in terms of a city like Ocean City trying to market itself?
The town has the whole new branding campaign, so they're really taking a closer look and sort of a deeper dive into where they're going, the types of people they're targeting, how they're targeting people. They have really sort of made a lot of changes, and I think we're starting to see some of that in terms of a different clientele.
What kind of changes are we talking about?
They're really targeting segments, so they're looking for millennial moms or active male adults. So they're really kind of pinpointing East Coast beach vacationer. So you can really target now in terms of demographics and a lot of geo-targeting in terms of what people are searching. So they're looking for people who want a beach vacation and not just doing a broad mass marketing on a TV channel.
That's Susan Jones. She's the executive director of the Ocean City Hotel, Motel, Restaurant Association on the Memorial Day weekend. Of course, there will be more events as the summer goes on, including St. Patrick's Day, the cruising, for instance, in Ocean City as well. So that'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But it looks like it's a bit of a slow start, but we'll see. Also, finally, we've got the issue of wind, offshore wind, Susan. Apparently, there's been a briefing, or going to be a briefing for people. What's going on there?
Yep, there's going to be a briefing. U.S. Wind, as you probably know, we've talked about this so many times, is an offshore wind development company, and that company has submitted permit applications to DENREC. That's Delaware's Department of Natural Resources. And then what they want is a wind energy project off the Maryland shore. And of course, the public is very interested in this, and it has been controversial. As you might recall, in January, Congressman Andy Harris had a panel discussion in Ocean City to talk about why he was not in favor of these windmills. And now, on Wednesday, June 5th, DENREC is going to have an informational meeting at Beacon Middle School in Lewis from 4 to 7 p.m. And if you attend, you'll get to hear about the proposal. That proposal is for both offshore and onshore export cables that would end at the Delaware Seashore State Park's 3 R's Beach parking lot. That parking lot is the DENREC building as at the Denrec building line and at the dunes. Those cables would connect to a substation that would be built on a tax parcel next to the Indian River Power Plant in Sussex County. Some of those cables, and there will be about 15 miles of them if this is approved, would be under wetlands and on land under the Atlantic Ocean. And those waters would be in Delaware, including the Indian River Bay. At the June 5th meeting, area residents will be able to see U.S. Wind's application. They'll be able to see display boards and talk to the staff and ask questions. A virtual public hearing is planned for July 9th, and written comments must be in by September 9th. You can send those comments to Denrec Hearing Comments at Delaware.com, and you'll find all the details at de.gov/US Wind.
Well, we're speaking with Coastal Point reporter Susan Canfor. Appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us and looking at the region.
As always, thank you.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.